everyone, and welcome to this Hymo setups lap guide, or tutorial lap as you want to call it. This will be mainly focused on the GT3s, be it normal driving or traffic management, which you'll need ahead of the 24 this weekend. So starting the lap, as a normal hot lap for GT3, you're going to be up against the wall. You see on the right hand side here you have these like little yellow boxes, or the last white line here on the left. Obviously, in the actual race itself, if you're in a train, you might end up lifting and braking here, but the same concept applies, where you want to follow this outside wall, follow in between like this tram track as you want to call it, between the white line and this wall here. And then what you want to do is, for this season, especially like in the last build or so, GT3s now we start actually using this wider line, so similar to what the LMDHs would do, or the LMP2s. In GT3, it's actually now viable and actually fast to do this, due to it actually allows a better exit out of T1, whereas before we were quite narrow on the way in. So with this, you want to brake pretty soft, like, well, not too hard, like 70%, roll it in, and you just want to aim in GT3 just to like slowly arc it in. You don't need to do the LMDH line where you be out here against the cones and go around the outside completely. Just in GT3, you just want to aim just to cross over this white line, just to use extra bit of track here, just to help the rotation of the car. The biggest thing I would say with this is, yes, it is fast like this in a hot lap for sure. In the actual 24 itself, with traffic, this will change a little bit through the stint. With the multi-class, with all the dirt and all the marbles, the outside line actually, yes, albeit you've got a lot of people using it, it will still pick up a lot of dirt on the outside, especially around this area here where my mouse is. This part here will just become completely covered after a few hours, and with that, as soon as you dip a wheel out there, you'll lose so much grip, you'll go straight on, or you'll lose the car in the exit T1. So just keep that in mind, that this line will probably change a little bit through the race depending on what the situation with the weather is, if it clears up with the rain or anything like that. Just keep that in mind. But obviously this also allows now that LMDHs will only really, normally will actually only overtake you now into T1 on the inside. Before, you had this mix where they would send it around the outside if they're close enough, or last second dive up the inside. With this now, you're kind of limiting them to the inside, which is quite easy to predict. Obviously, there might be a few late dives at like the mid corner, which I'll get to, but the general entry point, they should normally now aim for the inside. But for the outside line as it is, for the actual hot lap, what I'm going to do is, if I go into cockpit here, you're seeing the road here where the line like starts to curve. You can actually see here there's like a little dip. So you only use this dip in the track here to actually help rotate the car. Some cars will react a bit more extreme than others. So for the Audi, for me, I had to do it just as I got to the dip in the track here, which helped rotate the car. With the Mercedes and the BMW, for example, you go a bit deeper into the corner and come back on where this line is here, and actually use the bounce of the car when it hits the dip to rotate the car into the corner. In the Audi, and I think also the Corvette, for instance, it feels very on edge doing that. So just be careful when you're doing this. It will, if you've not done this before, it will take a little bit of time. But the main key is just be nice and smooth. Just be nice and smooth on the way, and you see I'm just being nice and gentle on the way, and the entire time, just like slowly turn it in, and you're aiming at this point really just to get as close as you can to this white line. You see, you actually don't really get to the apex till quite late into the corner. You just want to be nice and close to the white line and just hug this white line on the exit. Again, going back to what I was saying before with the traffic and the marbles, normally this part of the track will be quite dirty out here. So if you do have the situation where there is an LMDH or an LMP2 up the inside here, just be very wary that past like this like dark line here, the track falls away, one, but two, there'll also be a lot of dirt out here on the outside, which in some cars, especially like the Audi, if you go a little bit too far wide, you have a huge snap of oversteer, and as soon as you have that one snap of oversteer, it overheats the rear tyres, meaning that the rest of the lap is then quite tricky. So just keep this in mind. So if this happens and you get dived, just try and keep it as tight as possible, but allowing just enough room for the LMDH. They can keep to this white line, no problem. They can even run into the grass and just dip a wheel and wait, so just keep this in mind. But on power for GT3 here, you see I slowly build it up. I just hold it here about 70%. Wait till you're around the corner. And you don't really want to get on 100% power till you're well into this like extra bit of runoff here, but just before the outside curbing here. Just because, same as what I was saying before, you don't want to go over this side of the track here because you lose a lot of traction. And if you go on the power too early, you just get a massive snap on oversteer, which is just, you're going to have a really bad exit and leave yourself vulnerable up to the hairpin. But also, it stops you then pushing out too wide on exit, because as we know this season, or well, ever since we had this update, shall I say, this curb here, albeit it looks nice, as soon as you hit it at the wrong point, really just picks the car up and spins the car. Especially in GT3, it's very easy just to suddenly lose the car over the bump. So just be wary of this. But also, this is a main thing and a problem which will happen with traffic, especially if you're too wide through here with LMPs, or at the start of the race when you have if you're racing in your class positions at the start. Through here it can be quite tight. So the biggest key I would give here in traffic is just try and keep it as tight to this right hand curve as possible without going over it, because normally you end up meeting at this point here where my mouse is, and this is where normally you end up seeing cars like spin off to the right or get hit off. Just to avoid that, just keep it ever so more tight to the right here on the exit. Just allow them a little bit more space than you think. There's no point in trying to squeeze him or trying to avoid. Like, if you try and squeeze him here, you end up like having contact at this point, and it's just, as soon as you're on this grass, it's going to be a big crash. So just be nice and careful through here. Obviously with a neck cone and stuff. Up to the hairpin itself. On a normal race lap, you see you got the nice line here for the pit exit. You're aiming to actually come across into the pit lane exit line, and braking is just after this last white dot here, last part of the line. Obviously, in the race, you'll have traffic here, so just keep that in mind. Keep an eye on your relatives the entire time. But on a normal hot lap, when the track's clear, bring it across the white line. And then this last line here, or this last post, if you have this visible, you want to like start thinking about lifting off and braking here. And I brake a little bit late into the corner where this next post is, but you can brake a little bit earlier, a little bit later, depending on how you want to approach the hairpin. You can do this in like two ways really, maybe three in a sense with the traffic with the rubber. But you can either go in quite early and really roll it around the inside of the corner with a traditional line, which is you'd go in quite like in the middle and slowly V the corner off to get the exit. Or sometimes in the race, which you'll have to do, you have to go in quite deep because you have traffic up the inside of you into here. And then you have to really V the corner off and just be careful mid-corner not to get any sort of snaps in the dirt. But normal braking, not too heavy. Again, same as turn 1, you never really want to hit the brake too hard. It's very easy to overstop the car, which is the worst thing you can do for this corner. If you overstop the car here and you have to get on the power really early, you just understeer wide on the exit. So just keep this in mind. Nice jump on the way in. You can see here I do quite a medium, like mid-turning point. Just like slowly bring it into the apex. Again, still the same trail braking, not really releasing the brake pressure till I get into the corner where the curb is. As you can see, just a little bit off the white line here. You can roll on the white line, just be careful of the actual curb itself because this can cause huge like traction loss and slips on the exit. And what you want to do is you want to just bring the car back over. I got on the power now to about 80%, same as turn 1 on the exit. And you just want to hold this power whilst you're following the corner around. And then as soon as you, for my reference, as soon as I can be in line with this curb here, as soon as you start releasing the lock, you want to be able to be a full attack on the power on the exit. This allows you to drive out nice and not too wide, but just enough so you can just get up to this curb. Because you don't want to be hitting this curb, you just want to be right next to it or just running it. If you're like hitting it at the start of it, you've gone on the power too early, you've understeered wide. But traffic-wise into here, biggest thing I'd say is probably from like this section here, which I'm like highlighting. This, after a few hours, is normally just covered in dirt and marbles, same as the exit of T1. The main problem is obviously if you have a LMP who does a late dive into the hairpin, you can be pushed into this quite easily, and the biggest thing I would say is just be a bit careful afterwards. Especially when you're in it at the time, do not just stamp on the throttle and don't just like crank the steering. It's very easy just to lose a load of time, even with a snap or understeer because of this. And it will take a bit of time for the tire to come back to you, it seems. But that's the main gist of the hairpin. Just be careful. If you do see them diving you if you see them in your mirror, just don't worry about like lifting off a little bit early and letting them have the corner a bit earlier. If you can keep it in the middle and they can clear you before they actually get into the corner, and it's kind of perfect in that sense. But also around the hairpin itself, on the exit here as well, it'll pick up quite a bit of marbles and dirt as well, so just be wary of this one as well, because it's very easy to get on this here and you can actually get a bit of a snap at this point in the corner. On the exit, nothing really major. Obviously you bring the car back over to the right and follow this around. Just off the hairpin, if you see you've got LMPs in your mirror and it's clear that they're quite close, off the corner, if I was you, I would just keep it to the left hand side of this central line. Just makes it obvious for them to go around the outside. End of the day, the LMPs have got the downforce, we don't. Last thing you want to do is be the one hanging around the outside here with all the dirt and marbles. If you get on that on the outside, it's quite easy to go off and lose the car. So to me, it's just worth keeping it over here a little bit to the inside. Even if you have to lift a little bit into the kink because you're quite tight to the inside curb, I'd rather this than be on the outside having to hang on to the car. But in a normal situation, just bring it straight back across. Just follow the corner through, nothing really crazy. Just try and avoid this curb. It's quite easy to hit this curb and then just get loose for no reason. So into the hairpin. You're trying to keep it nice and clean on the entry here. You're aiming, see where this little white line is here. The track actually opens up at this point. And what you want to do is you want to run your left-hand side tyres into this and actually just use this bit of runoff just to open the track up. Just with this, it allows you to have a nice entry into the apex of the next hairpin. Because the problem with this corner is very easy to over-brake on the way in, get to the apex and you stop the car too much, and then if you hit the power too hard, with the way the curb is and the way the track is, it's very easy to get this huge snap of oversteer, which really hurts the left rear tyre. And you'll notice that then, especially when you come into the bus stop in a direction change, it's like the tyre temps never really cool down from it. So you just want to keep this in mind. But anyway, I just lift off a little bit. And then you want to start braking actually where these last two cones are. And just before you actually get back to this white line where it reappears again. And you just want to brake nice and gentle. Nothing too crazy, 60-70% again. You don't want to be smashing the brakes into here. And you can see, just because I've widened the entry up, you can see that I'm just going to be following this line around the corner here. Just going to follow it all the way around. Nice and gentle, nice and smooth on the inputs on the steering. And what you want to be trying to aim for, you want to trail brake all the way in, and you want to try and get your right hand tyre, up on this white line or onto the curb itself, just to hook the car up. See, I don't actually really do anything now. I just roll it for ever so slightly, just to hook the curb up. And with this, because you're nice and tight on the curb, it just gives you so much more traction on the exit. If you come off this too early and you try and power at this point here, for some reason the car you have a load of oversteer on the exit. Especially in the Audi and in the Corvette I found, it's very easy here to get a huge snap of oversteer on the exit if you don't hold this corner really tight. But obviously the main problem with this is, in the race itself, you can imagine you're going to have a few LMDHs and LMP2s dive bombing into here. GT3, always try and make them go for the inside. Because if they're on the outside, the marbles here is probably actually one of the worst on the track, I'd say. It actually pulls up to like here, where this line is, all the way out here. And if an LMDH gets on that, they just go straight on. So most likely, they're going to be trying to send you up the inside. And they can do it very late into the corner. They can do it at this point here where my mouse is. So what I would do is just be a bit cautious of this. If you get into the marbles here, just be nice and gentle. Don't stamp on the brakes and just don't stamp on the throttle. Same as the hairpin before. You can lose a few temps here, but it's nothing too major as long as you don't do any like really aggressive inputs when it happens. Then following the exit, you see nice and gentle on the power. Same as the hairpin in turn 1. Same real concept where you're balancing the power. I bring the car back as close as I can to the white line on the exit before I hit 100% power. And with this, it just allows you to have a nice, clean exit. Up onto probably the most important corner on the track to me, which is the entry pre-banking, if you want to call it. Quick corner with the traffic here. LMDHs, I'd always try and make them go for the outside here. It's a bit easier later in the race if you're on the inside here. If there's a few of them, right? If there's like 2 or 3 LMDH or a mix of them and LMP2s, if they just have the outside, just because on the outside here, if an LMDH or an LMP2 dive bombs you into here, there's a lot of marbles again, same as turn 1, where they build up on the outside on like the grey runoff, and it comes back onto the track. And the issue is with GT3, as soon as you hit them, you have no traction on the exit, and because of that, it really hurts you on the straight. So let's say you're battling another GT3, because of this, you'd lose so much time. So to me, I just try and make them go around the outside here, so it gives them the more optimal racing line. But with GT3, with this, because end of the day with GT3, we use this runoff anyway on the racing on a normal hot lap. We brake in the runoff again, same as the previous corner, nice and gentle, late turn in. But we always try in GT3 to use this bit of curb and grass, like gravel here, For some reason, this just gives you huge traction and huge rotation, and there's a no-brainer not to use this. It's a very key thing what people miss out on. Using this is really beneficial for the exit. But you can imagine if you've got traffic, for instance, it's kind of hard for us to hit this, and then we go all the way around the outside here. So if we can always be on the inside and get to this curb, you will never have an issue on the exit because of that. So that's why I'd always try and suggest the LMDHs and LMP2s have the outside interior if they're close enough, if halfway down the strip they can. Obviously, if they're going to have to send it up the inside, they're going to send it up the inside. Just be a bit wary of that. But you just want to be nice and on this curb itself. You just get a car, as you can see, the car bounce a little bit here on the exit. But you just got to be careful of the throttle. As long as you do the same build up, like slowly peak up to like 60-70%, hold it, then go, you should have a clean exit. But you can also, with this exit, you can actually run it out pretty wide, or you can hold it a little bit and then roll it to the inside and keep it tight on the exit. Either way is absolutely fine. But just remember, the actual central point, so this bit here, the track has like a massive bump in it or like a lip on either side. So this bit's a bit flat, this bit's flat, but this bit's quite like high up. Because of that, that's what would cause a slip. If you get any sort of drifting here because you're too aggressive on power, you just drift from here all the way onto the banking and you just have such a bad exit. So just keep this in mind when you're doing that. But for me on this lap, I ran it out wide, but there's also laps which I've done in the Mercedes, for instance, or the BMW. I kept it quite tight because it was better for that car for the traction. It just depends on how you want to exit this corner with traction with the car. Onto the banking, I would suggest as well, don't go right up against the wall, there's no need to, but just keep it a little bit higher initially, and then just bring it back down. Just allows you to carry a little bit more speed when you come back down. And then, all along the banking, just be as close to this yellow line as possible, without actually touching it or the bottom, because as soon as you do that, you just bottom out. Then up the run up to the bus stop, I would suggest, so firstly with traffic, make your direction, like which side you want to be on, very easy for the LMDH to spot. So you don't have to like halfway down the straight have to keep swapping sides or which way. If you see there's 2 or 3 of them coming, and here, just keep it to the inside and let them have the outside. Only really let them take the inside if it's an actual late move. Then when you're on the outside for the corner, because you don't want to be having to brake on the inside so late. If you can be, as long as you're ahead at this point, like before the freeboard, you make them go to the inside. Till then, I'd always try and suggest to get them on the outside. It makes it easy for you on the bus stop. So for the actual braking itself at the bus stop, you can see you got the markings on the right hand side of the board, so the 1, 2 and 3. What you want to mainly focus on here, you got the 2 board and the 1 board in front of us. And what you see when you get here is the little yellow boxes on the right hand side. Same as turn 1. You want to use these as like your main braking / reference point. You can lift off here and just coast in and then brake. That is absolutely fine. Or if you want to be a bit aggressive on a full push lap, for instance, on the right hand side here, these markers, like these little boxes. At this point here, I brake, but nothing too, like the biggest thing I would say is don't be really aggressive. If you're very snappy on the brakes or very aggressive, so you want to be really aggressive with the steering, or you jab the brakes on the way in, it really unsettles the car, and that's what catches most people out on entries when they say the car's loose. It's normally because they've just been too aggressive on the way in. So be nice and gentle on the initial braking. 1 board is where you probably want to start aiming to turn in, because what you want to do is, from a cockpit view, you're aiming to cut over this left hand side curb. You see, I'd trail brake it in, the same brake pressure, just nice and gently on the way in. So this allows you to carry as much speed in without losing the car or stopping the car too much. If you stop the car too much, you're going to have to power too early through the corner. And if you don't use enough on the way in, you're just going to miss the corner completely and bounce off the curb. With the Audi and a few other cars, I find it nicer to go down 1 gear on the way in, and then do the second downshift between the first curb and the second curb just for rotation. Such as the BMW and the Mercedes, I find that very beneficial because the car's a bit heavier, so you need to use that for the rotation. For the Audi, it was purely just for stability. So as you'll see here, I go down to 5th, completely cut over this left-hand curb. Very crucial you get as much on top of this as possible. The off-track is on the grass anyway, so as long as you use just the white part and then the yellow curb, it's fine. I pull the downshift now. As you can see, I actually get back on the brakes when I do the downshift as well, just to balance the car. Because what you want to do now is cut over this right-hand curb. You can be a bit more aggressive here. Like for me, you can go over this completely, but for the Audi, I find it a bit safer doing this anyway, because you don't want to go too far wide here, especially in the actual race with loads of rubber and like dirt. The bus stop you can see it here for me in this session. There's already a bit of dirt forming like from like the grass here. Problem is in the race itself, this part here is always going to be covered. It's going to be a very tight line through here through the race. So just be very wary of that. As soon as you dip a wheel, you will lose a lot of traction and the car will become loose. So I would keep practicing being a bit tighter here. Yes, it might be a bit slow in your practice runs on an actual race run, but it would be more beneficial than dipping a wheel into the dirt and then losing the car. But as you can see, up on this curb completely, lift off. I get back on the power as soon as I'm off the curb, so now in between the two for the final one. And the last curb, you want to try and get up onto this part of the white curb and the yellow curb. If you're going a little bit too early and you hit the grass, you get the off track there, and also that's what causes the huge snaps, what people have been seeing or you might have had an experience with. It's all basically on this little bit of grass here which causes the snaps. And on the exit, just balance the power, then 100% before you get to the exit curb. You can be on 100% power here. Sometimes it's okay, especially towards the end of a run, but at the start of a run I wouldn't really, there's no need because it can just cause the car to snap randomly. Just build it up through the stint. And on the exit curb, the off track is actually like around here where my mouse is, and if you go like over the actual white line part here of the curb. Biggest suggestion I would say here as well, if you do have like a slide or a wobble, just be nice and calm with it. Don't overcorrect. It's very easy here to overcorrect on the exit when you have a little slide. And also, if you do, try and keep the car over to the left if you're like recovering a little bit on the exit. Especially if you have LMP2s or LMDHs behind you, it's very easy for them to drive into you on the exit if you're having a bit of a wobble on the exit. So just keep this in mind when you're driving if you get traffic management through here. Right, onto the banking itself, same concept as before. Just be down tight onto the bottom, hugging the yellow line but not dipping across it. Just follow this all the way around. The other thing I would say is in qualifying you want to be driving up against the wall here. So around the banking here, as soon as you start your lap, like your flying lap, go up high for the run up. It gives you an extra few Ks to the line, like an extra 1 or 2 Ks. But that's just for qualifying. In the race, down the bottom, hook it to a yellow line, all the way. And last thing really is if you do see an LMDH coming into T1 or a few tenths back, maybe just pop up high a little bit earlier just to give them the inside so they know exactly which side you want them to go in for turn 1. But beside that, that is the lap of Daytona, and I hope this helps you guys out for the race this weekend. So best of luck to you. So for pit entry, obviously that is going to be one of the main key points from this whole video and tutorial. In the race it's going to make or break the race for a lot of people, and many people do get speed in pit entry here. It's quite common. Also, there's many times I've seen people crash on the pit entry with different cars, be it LMPs or other GT3s. So for pit entry itself, for the actual normal pit entry, normally you'd probably on the apron, it's on the actual yellow line itself. But for this example, I could actually come up high because obviously it's an open track. But normally you scout out you see the white line here on the apron, see how it kinks here a little bit, and then also curves into the actual pit lane itself. Your main braking point is actually this part of the line here. It seems quite late into the pit lane, but as long as you brake in a straight line, but use that as like your reference point, this will allow you to actually carry as much speed as possible into the pit lane without actually running the risk of getting a speeding in pit lane. And you see here, I come across the line now, and as soon as I get into this line itself, so this would be in my right monitor for example, so if I go into the cockpit now, this is going over into my right hand side of my vision, right eye, so I know exactly where this is. So from here, you see it looks even more obvious here. You're braking just before you get to this. Heavy on the brakes, but don't just slam the brakes to 100%. If you hit the brake at 100%, you just hit the ABS. The problem with doing that is it's very easy then just to overdo it on pit entry because it won't actually slow the car down enough. You just want to be a little bit below the ABS threshold. As you can see, just nice and gentle on the way in, hold the same brake pressure. But the key thing is to make sure you just brake in a straight line. Also, if you're one of these first pit stalls, so if you're like in the back part of GT3, for example, what I would suggest for that is what I actually would do in the first stint, for example, of the race. I'd actually drive across this whole way. You don't get a penalty for driving over here into the pit entry. So in the first run of the stops, for instance, if you're like a 3 or 4 pack of GT3s, I would cut across this completely, just because then it avoids you having any sort of crashes here or in the fast lane where the merging where it happens. Because obviously it's very easy for the cars to turn each other here on entry and crash. But also, you're travelling a bit less distance for the pit stalls, and if you're, for example, the first stall here, which is the worst one to have, if you brake and just follow the white line completely, so let's say you drive completely over here, and you have an L&P, for instance, the second stop or the third stint or something, if you're out here, you're never going to get to your pit stall. So for me, you always want to be trying to keep it as close to this wall as possible. Just be nice and gentle on the way in. Don't panic and just slam the brakes 100%. It's the worst thing to do. People have done it. I've done it myself many times. Just be nice and just hold the brake pressure at 80-90% and you'll be absolutely fine as long as you brake in a nice straight line. And as soon as you get to the pit lane itself, you can go, if you need to, you can drop a little bit below. See, like at the line here, I actually went over, but as long as you stop the car, you're fine. And just in the pit lane itself, you can drive around 89, which is 80 or 88.5. You can drive always a little bit over the 88 threshold, which it gives you on the pit entry. And what I would do is, especially in GT3, there's no need for you to drive out here. Just drive along the actual, like where the actual stalls would be. It makes it easy for you to actually spot your pit box. If you're out here and you've got, I don't know, 1 or 2 cars with you and you're this box, for example, you're never going to see it if you're stuck behind someone out here. So to me, always drive through these or like closer if you need to. So just follow that. If you actually get to your pit stall, let's say your pit stall is now, if your pit stall is this one here, then drive into it and brake. Biggest thing I would say and suggest with these actual the braking in the actual stalls itself, it's brake a little bit more, like brake a bit softer than you'd actually expect, but also a bit earlier. With these, it's very easy to overshoot your pit box itself. If you run the iRacing spotter, which I would suggest, you get the countdown, it's like 3, 2, 1. At 1, already start getting ready to fully stop. If you go at now, sometimes you do run the risk of it being a little bit too wet and you overshoot the box if you're like a bit like panicky on the box and making it in. Especially at the end of a stint if you're low on fuel. Last thing you want to do is go in a little bit too aggressive and overshoot the box and then have to tow because you're out of fuel. The worst thing what can happen. So that was the main things with the actual pit box itself. Just be a bit careful on the actual slowing the car down in the pit box. The lane itself, 88, 89 k's is pretty fine. I'm off the pit limiter here and I'm just rolling it in. About 89, no problem. Do all this. Normal pull away. Make sure you got the limiter on. People do forget if you do a driver stop. Sometimes they leave the limiter off. Make sure it's on to when you do your pull away. You can drive all the way up to 88 or 88.2, whatever it does. So you can hit that point completely fine, no problem. And what I would do is I would then take the limiter off and just balance the power at like 88, 89 on throttle. If you're sitting on the limiter, 1, it burns fuel, and 2, it's also slower than actually holding it at a constant speed of 88. They're the main ones. Then for the actual pit exit road itself, just same again, you just want to hold the same speed, follow all the way around. The hardest part is actually this actual corner itself, especially on the cold tyres. What I would do here is I actually always pull the I always put the pit limiter on. And with putting the pit limiter on, I can then actually just control the speed and just hold the throttle a bit easier. See here, for example, you see I actually put the throttle completely flat out now. If you try and do that without the limiter, obviously you're going to spin or over rotate the car. So if you need a bit of help through this corner, you can easily put the pit limiter on and just ride on that, no problem through here. Also try and dip your left wheel on the white line on the grass. You don't get the pit exit for it, so just help turn the car, because obviously especially with cold tyres this corner can be quite annoying. And as soon as you're up to here, you can take the limiter off now and just roll it again at the 88, 89 Ks. Personally, I just, at this point here, you've already done it for so long, if you've done it on the entry, down the pit lane, and here. This point, I always put it back on, just because I can use the first gear initial launch point out of the pit lane. So like now I'm on the limiter, and as soon as I get to this line, I can take the limiter off and just go 100% attack on the exit. And on the exit, just make sure you don't hit any of the actual cones. You can run up close to them, but if you hit them, you'll get the penalty. So they're the main things in the pit lane. Nothing too crazy. Just be nice, and the race is not all win the pit lane. End of the day, just make sure you keep it nice and chill through here. No major risks, but hopefully these tips do help a little bit.